Welcome to the show No Instructions, where we meet with founders and interview them about starting and growing their businesses. I'm your host, Chad Ingram, 3-time founder and CEO at Distro. Distro is a platform to help businesses build teams by breaking down borders around the world. Let's go ahead and get started with today's guest and see how they built their business. Welcome to the show No Instructions. Today we have Jimmy Rex on this podcast. And
thanks for having me, Chad.
So excited to have you, dude. We've talked about having you on for a bit, and finally I was like, all right, now it's time. So, you know, in this podcast, like the purpose of it is to help people see like what those early stages were like, you know, given no instructions really, like in how you do everything. And you just kind of have to figure it out along the way. So as we before we dive into your story, give us like Twitter style. What is your business or businesses today? And then we're gonna go back to kind of the earlier days.
Sure. My main thing right now that I'm really working on and trying to grow, and I just hired some C-level executives and really pushing this thing is my company, We Are the They.
Yeah.
It's a men's coaching company. We now teach kids as well and women. We have a women's group as well. But ultimately, it's a program for men to become a better version of themselves, to really work through some things, being, vulnerable, authentic, and in integrity.
Yeah.
And we do that a lot through community building and events and adventure, but also being willing to go deep and talk about things that people never want to talk about. So that's my main thing I'm doing right now. I basically, about 4.5 years ago, to kind of goes into my other businesses.
Yeah.
I did real estate for 17 years. That's all I did. I did like side gigs, and things like that. But ultimately my main thing was real estate, and I was buying a lot of real estate for myself that I still own. I own about 60 doors today. I was flipping a lot of houses my last year before I started We Are the They.
As an agent, right?
I was flipping them as a separate business. So I had a partner. We flipped about 35 deals my last year. Yeah. Wow. So it was full time for her, and I was kind of the one that would help sell them, and I was financing them. And so did that. And so I had that business, and then I just had my full-time real estate team where we help a lot of investors, but then a lot of people here locally. And I still have that team runs. I turned that over to a guy named Tyler Bennett, who kind of...
You still have the brokerage.
Yeah. So it's not the brokerage, it's just my team, but Tyler runs it. Yeah. And then I kind of just help, with everything. Yeah. And so that's kind of all of my business there. And then I'm an investor in over 30 private companies. 4 restaurants, all sorts of funds and crypto and all the fun stuff. So I was an early investor. I was a seed round investor in Nikola Motors, which is tech.
That's been interesting.
That was the roller coaster of a lifetime.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah, we can talk about it if you want. I was an investor in Entrada. So great. I cashed out
company.
Yep, I cashed out about 1/3 of my investment in that. Did very well.
Wow.
And then I've invested in, I'd have to pull up my phone, but there's about 15 other companies that I invested in. Some are tech. It's interesting because I just was bored of just doing real estate. But real estate, if I'm being honest, if I would have just invested everything in real estate, I probably would have had more money.
Probably.
Even with the 2 good ones, Nikola and Entrada. But there's so many that sound good. Orca Health and all these, they sell you and then it's never what you think. I invested in parachute.co and dude, they already knew they were going under when they took my money. I've gone public with this. Those guys suck. Screw them. Seriously, no. And so I didn't know what I didn't know. I made a lot of bad investments, but ultimately, I've come out very well out of those, and it's allowed me to kind of do some other stuff. Crypto.
Okay, before you give away any more, let's go back.
Cool.
Okay, where does your story start?
I think my story starts when I was a kid. Where does your story start? It's so many different places, but I remember when my parents, we had 7 kids and they were trying their hardest, but money was always a fight. And I remember being at the bottom of the stairs, hearing my parents fight about money and thinking to myself, okay, if I can get rich, I won't have a family fighting. And so from a very young age, I definitely had a strong desire to earn money. So, I was the 7-year-old selling door to door. I was the 8-year-old with a lemonade stand, the 9-year-old selling baseball cards. I just was always trying to sell something.
What did your parents do for a living?
My dad went through a couple of different things, but when I was younger, he was a realtor. And then then he became a truck driver, a diesel truck driver. That was kind of when we were at lowest point financially.
Was it like local stuff, or would he like?
No,
be
he'd
gone
like be
for a
gone
while?
for days, and yeah.
That's
And
tough.
then after he sold like diesel parts, and then he got into diesel insurance.
Huh.
And when he got into the insurance side, he did really well, and family had money for sure. My mom was a school teacher.
Okay. Did your dad ever go back to being a real estate agent, or that was kind
He
of it?
did it was kind of, I mean, long story short, he had an exit to go on a mission with my mom, an LDS mission.
Yeah.
They were going to get a divorce, and then they went and met with the stake president, decided to go on a a mission instead. Don't know how that works, but
Are they still together now?
no, of course not.
Yeah, no, he says, of course not. Sorry, mom and dad.
It was a great Band-Aid. The
for a
time they
little
were out
bit.
there, they seemed to like it.
So where do
And,
you fall in the siblings?
I'm the 6 out of 7.
Okay, so you're towards the end.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So what did your other siblings end up doing for a living? Like,
They all have nice like lives and careers. A lot of them went into the insurance route. My brother
Okay.
Dale has his own real estate company.
Cool.
My sister Jenny is a stay-at-home mom. Her husband just has a really good career, and they just have normal people jobs, but like do great. Yeah.
but do you think like
Not entrepreneurs necessarily though.
Yeah, it's like, where do you think, and we'll get into it a little bit later, but like this appetite for risk taking, how did that, did you feel that when you were younger, or did that come later?
I'll tell you where I think it comes from. So when I got home from my mission,
Okay.
Where'd
you go?
I went to Monterrey, Mexico.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I wanted to be a waiter. I wanted to meet people. I wanted to use my Spanish. I thought that'd be a cool job. And I
Cool
applied
job.
at like 7 or 8 restaurants, and none of them would hire me because I wouldn't work Sundays.
You wanted to be a waiter, and that wasn't going to work out.
Yeah, I couldn't get a job as a waiter. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll go into sales. And so I started selling meat door to door, and very quickly learned how it worked.
Like as a teenager, or this was after you came back.
Yeah, I was like
so you were
21.
like 21.
Yeah, I was 21. And so I started this, I was working, selling meat door to door. And it was interesting because I noticed I was the only one selling anything, but there was like multiple employees and 2 bosses. I'm like, am I paying for everybody? And so I learned how it worked, and I was paying for everybody. I was making them a couple grand a week.
Wow.
While I was going out and selling meat. And so I just learned how it worked and started my own meat company. And
No way.
yeah, there was a number on the box, like a business that we would sell the meat. And I just Googled it and figured out where this company was. I said, hey, I'm interested in possibly selling meat for you guys. I have a buddy that does it in Salt Lake City. How much do I pay per case if I go through you? And I was paying about $110 per case of meat on average, to give you an idea. We'd sell them for around $150. So you make the difference, right?
Yeah.
And the guy's like, yeah, each box is like $54. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was selling 12 a day. So
oh my gosh.
I was making these dudes $600 a day just because I didn't know where to get the meat from. Like literally they were a
That was the
middleman.
only reason.
I would go in the morning, get the meat from them, and then leave. That was the only thing they were providing me.
Oh man.
And so that day I went to my old boss. I said, look, I'll give you $1,000 to teach me everything I don't know. Otherwise I'm leaving either way. And he goes, okay. He goes, by the way, I can get the cases for $52, which you're selling enough of them. It adds up, right? And so anyway, so I started the meat company. I'd done a Christmas light company with my brother. That was kind of funny because that was like right off.
What year would this be roughly?
That was 2003.
Okay.
No, 2002. It was right off my mission. I was literally a couple of weeks off my mission, and I'd heard of somebody else doing it. Yeah. You want to hear funny what we would do? So he was like the daring one that would go on the roofs, and I'd go up there too, but he'd be like, I'd be down below praying he didn't fall and die, and he'd be up there. I'm just like, oh man, this is scary. Anyway, but what we would do is we'd flyer a neighborhood and say, hey, if you want to bid for an estimate for a free bid, then hit us up. And then I'd go over to their house, and I was just reading the person. So based on how excited they were to get it, or how desperate they were to get it, or how much money I could see they already spent on stuff, I'd quote them anywhere from 300 to 1,000. Yeah, it depends on what they said. And so anyway, and if they were like, oh, that's way too much, I'm like, well, we could do some things different. Maybe I can, just try to negotiate it.
Did you feel like you had, I mean, at least at this point in your life, did you have any like grandiose vision, or were you just hustling to make some money?
So when I was a kid, there's this moment, this has actually come back to the meat story. So when you're a kid, you want to have money, you want to be rich, you want to have a good life, but you don't know what that looks like. You don't know if it's going to happen. You're like, you don't know. You don't even know what skills you have, really.
Right.
And I remember, dude, the first day I went out and sold meat, it changed my whole life, because So I, went out and I made like $300 in like an hour and a half. Wow. And I knew, I distinctively remember a change in me happening in that moment, because I knew my worst case scenario in life is I was going to make $100,000 a year selling meat door to door. That's like having $250 today. Right. And so I knew I was going to have a pretty good life. I was like, oh, I can sell. I can, I figured as much. I mean, I was a good missionary, and, it's a lot of people listening, but that's not really, I mean, it is, but it's not,
Right.
And so that day I was like, oh my gosh. And it kind of blew the possibilities of my life open a little bit. And so then I, shortly after I opened the meat company, I had a buddy and I went and saw Napoleon Dynamite. And as we're leaving, I just thought it was cool because it was like Utah, and like I knew some people in it. I'm like, damn, I should do something like that. And I told him I had this idea at the time. Do you remember the TV show Blind Date? So they used to take these two people on a blind date, and they'd have like pop-up bubbles. People listening to this right now are like, what's a blind date? It's when you didn't see them on the internet before you took them out, okay? You were just hoping they'd be attractive. About 90% of the time they open the door and you're like, ah, shit, this date's going to suck.
Exactly. And you literally had no other recourse. There was no social media.
No, you just showed up.
Yeah.
There was some fun in that. But I remember one time I opened the door, man, some pleasant surprises too. My friend Carissa, she set me up with this girl from Hawaii once, and I opened the door. This girl's like a 10 out of 10. I'm like, what in the heck is going on? That was the good side. Then you have other people set you up, and you open the door and you're like, really? That's what you think of me? You think this is my equivalent? What is wrong with you? Bro, I remember. And she's like, what are we doing after dinner? I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. They didn't tell you. I just said I had time for dinner.
We're going home early.
I still showed them a good time and had dinner. But but dude, I used to love going on blind dates. But anyway, so you go on we would set people up on a blind date, and we'd film it, and then we'd put like little pop-up bubbles and make fun of them. So there was a TV show that did this, and I was like, what if you did a Mormon version of this in Provo? And so I did it. And the first dude I had on, I knew this girl from the gym.
So you were filming it like a show?
Oh yeah. Dude, no way. I didn't know what I was doing. I went and bought the equipment. And we filmed a pilot. And one of my buddies from high school, he knew kind of how to edit and stuff. And a kid from my college knew how to put the pop-up bubbles. Nowadays, I'm sure it's easy. Back then, you had to be like a computer scientist to figure this shit out, And so we do the first episode, dude. And I remember when we came up with the name for it, you're going to love this. We're sitting there brainstorming. My buddy, Francis, he's like, I got it. I got the name.
How cheesy is it?
And we were coming up with it's the greatest name ever. We were coming up with the worst names, dude, like Provo Dating Show, Mormon Dating. And all of a sudden he goes, this is the name of the date or of the show. He goes, Not on the First Date. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so good.
That's actually not bad.
So good. And then I immediately go, where we take you from blind date to eternal mate. It was like, that was a great tagline. It was so good. I was so happy about it.
Did it crash or how did it
go?
No,
dude, actually did really well.
Really?
So the very first episode, we go out and film this thing. And I'm just hoping it's going to be funny.
This was what, like
2004?
I feel like I've heard of this.
Oh, it was the #1 show on KJazz for a year, yeah.
I feel like I've heard of this.
Yeah, Sunday nights, dude. We beat out the Kyle Whittingham coaching show, and we beat out, there was a show called Utah Brides that was really popular. Yeah, it got good, dude. It was funny, because what I would do, bro, the very first episode, I took this return missionary. I think he'd been home for like 5 days.
Yeah.
And then I set him up with the hottest girl from the gym. She was like a smoke show.
It was a disaster.
Oh, it was a beautiful disaster. We're like 20 seconds into the date, he already mentions his mission. So we have like a countdown clock from the moment he picks her up. And then they went and did like finger painting, and it was like they get in a fight with it, and you're totally manipulating it, right? Like, but it was funny, dude. And we showed it. I ended up getting picked up by KJazz.
Really?
Yeah. And they it was funny, dude. And so anyway, long story short, did that. But I didn't make any money.
Did you keep doing the meat thing in the meantime?
So I was still doing the meat thing, and I had just started real estate. So I was doing all three. I mean, and I was in school, bro.
So who introduced you to real estate? Like, so this is your early 20s still, right?
Yep.
And like, what made you think, oh, I need to go become an agent? Because I mean, half of the agents or more are like, oh, I heard this was a good experience. I'll go try it. And then they sell one deal to their mother-in-law or something.
Yeah. So
that's it.
I had a buddy, Clint, my buddy Clint. He went to, he worked at a place called Prosper. It was owned by my buddy Randy Garn. Yeah. And they would sell real estate.
Randy owned Prosper? I didn't remember. I don't remember that. That was here in Lehigh. That was
so my buddy would sell for them, and they gave him a bunch of the CDs and stuff to listen to, the audiobooks and the trainings. And he gave me, it was like Robert Kiyosaki and Carlton Sheets and some of these guys that were the original OGs. And
I love Robert Kiyosaki. That changed my life.
Oh, same. Yeah, everybody.
Changed my life.
If you haven't listened to it, go do it. It'll change your life. Yeah. But anyway, so I listened to those and I was like, oh, I need to do real estate.
Yep.
And it was all about investing, but I was like, well, I'll get my license. So then I know well, the truth is I went to UVU for 2 years. This is how stupid I was, dude. So I didn't know you have to apply to go to a real college like BYU. Like UVU, you just show up and start picking classes.
Where do I sign up?
Yeah, literally. And so I walk into BYU like January 4th, they're about to start the semester. And I'm like, hey, I'm here to sign up for class. And they're like, okay, well, did you get accepted? Like, did you apply? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's why I'm here. And they're like, okay, so you want to go in October? I'm like, no, I want to start now. They're like, well, sir, like the deadline to apply was months ago. So I got 6 months with nothing to do. Seriously, I didn't know. Yeah. Like I needed an adult in my life that was smarter than me. I was just winging everything, dude, for better or worse.
That's good though.
Well, the beauty of it is I'm not afraid to try anything.
Right.
The bad thing is it's really expensive education when you have to figure out all the mistakes on your own, right? But it's made me so, and this is where I'm going with all this actually, so I do the TV show and I get into real estate, start doing these things. And here's what happened, dude, so by all means, the TV show you could say was not a success because we didn't make any money, although it was so fun. But here's what happened. Dude, I had to go to every entertainment place in town, every restaurant in town, and I'm meeting the owners. I'm selling them on my idea, my vision for this thing, right? I didn't even have it on KJazz yet, and I raised like 50 grand from sponsors, dude. Seven Peaks gave me a freaking $10,000 key sponsor deal. And I'm so like, awesome. I just had to create it. I just knew I was going to make it work. But I've never been in this. Ed Milet spoke at my conference 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
And he said, I wish I could.
He's your coach too, right?
He is. Yeah. He's my one-on-one coach. He said, I wish I could pound this into people's heads. The only thing that successful people have been able to master that the others don't is they're willing to take imperfect action, not knowing it's going to work.
Yeah,
I was like,
totally.
It's so true, dude.
So
like
true.
all the people, like your podcast, it's working because you just decided to do it.
Totally.
I made you wait 30 episodes to have me on because I'm guessing you're better today than you were on episode 4.
Definitely.
But that was the whole point, right? And like all these things. So, but the ability to just take action, not needing it to work. And I think so here's where I'm going. Again, I do this TV show. And I ended up paying everybody else. I ended up raising a bunch of money, but I didn't make any money by the end of it. And it was exhausting. It was
Which happens to a lot of entrepreneurs.
100%. I was the only one that didn't get paid, right? Right. And I was just exhausted. Real estate had picked up. So I started doing real estate. Dude, I do this meat company. I ended up losing about 130 grand. A whole nother story for another podcast.
Yep.
But I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, wait, I met all these amazing people. I had all these amazing experiences. So I had failed at the meat company. I had failed at the TV show.
Right.
My first run at real estate, I bought a lot of real estate in 0506 and it collapsed.
There you go.
I failed at my real estate investing. But to the outside, everybody kept like honoring what I was doing. It was like, oh my gosh, Jimmy just had a TV show at 20. By the way, I've seen the videos of it, like looking back, somebody should have tackled me.
Yeah,
that dude had no business doing a TV show. Dude, I was the producer, the editor, the guy that sold the sponsorship. I was everything, bro. It was the host.
How many episodes did it go?
Well, so we did the whole first year was like 15 episodes.
That's a lot.
Each episode had 2 dates. Oh, dude,
that's a lot.
Yeah, it was a full ass TV show. Yeah,
totally.
And then year 2, I was done. I was exhausted. I wanted to do real estate full time. I didn't make any money.
So you started the real estate gig, and you're like, I met a bunch of people now. Like I met.
Yeah, so I knew a bunch of people. And that's what I'm saying is like, it was really a failure. The TV show was, so was the meat company, but to everybody else, it was so honorable that I was trying. And I think I kind of learned that the only failure is not trying it. Like, even though you fall on your face, do you go ask out the hottest girl and she says no? If you're in college, you listen to this. Like, I had this theory. I was like, I'm going to ask them all out. Because if they say no, I'm right back where I started. I didn't take it personal. I assumed they're hung up on someone else. But if every now and then they'd say yes.
Every now and again.
So guess what? Every weekend I had 1 or 2 beautiful dates because I'd ask out 10 girls during the week. You know what I mean? And so like for me, the failure is in not trying. Like I can live with something not working. But if I don't try, like on their deathbeds, that's everybody. I wrote this in my first book, You End Up Where You're Heading.
Yeah.
Like people don't regret the things they did. They regret the dreams that die within them. They regret the conversation they never had, the forgiveness they never gave, the dream they just never built upon, the trip they never took. Like that's what they regret.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so I just err on the side of like, whatever, YOLO, let's wing it. And I really do that. And so if my entrepreneurship really got empowered through those experiences when I was in my young 20s, because I just knew that like my worst case scenario, whatever, it doesn't work, I'll still get this huge benefit from it.
Yeah. So you start real estate, then like, how does that go initially? Like you go from TV producer to now tie wearing real estate agent.
Dude, when I started out, I was pretty broke. I mean, I'd thrown everything into this meat company. I threw everything into this TV show. It was stressful for sure. If people knew how broke I was, they would have, had an intervention. I mean, it was pretty bad. I start real estate and my first 6 months did not go well. I think I did like 3 deals. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know who to call. And then, dude, I hired a coach. I hired a real estate coach, Mike Ferry.
Yeah.
I didn't know at the time he was the GOAT.
When you were young, like way back when.
24, yeah.
So you have seen value in having coaches always.
Oh, bro, that's why I have these coaches. Because my first 6 months, I sold 3 houses. My next 6 months, I sold almost 60.
Wow.
And my first full year in the business, I sold 98 houses with 1 assistant. I was one of the 2 finalists for Salesperson of the Year on the Salt Lake Board of Realtors.
One of my like greatest mentors who like took me under his wing when I was young, his name's Alan, and he's an old school real estate investor, Alan Kreutzkamp. He lives in Orem. He hustled hard when he was in his 20s and 30s and he buys like mega properties and flips them now. And he just low key behind the scenes kind of guy. He owns like 2,000 doors or something like that. Like really, really big. And I remember his story is like early on, he figured out like the good listing options. Like, so he would become like almost exclusively a listing agent. Mm-hmm. So he'd list all these properties and he'd do like a quarter of the work to be able to sell them. And he just figured out a good way. And he said way back when, before he, opened it up as his own brokerage, he was like number 2 in the state or something like that. He'd thrown down a lot of properties. So like you can do really, really well with the right mentorship.
Yeah, I mean, that was, real estate is so simple. It's not easy because you got to do the work, but it's simple. You learn what to say. You learn how to say it effectively, right? Yeah. And then you just do it all day.
Yeah.
Like, it's all it was. So I became a machine. And so I was just pounding phones, pounding doors, just doing the thing. And
work. Like you weren't waiting for deals to come.
No, like agents would come shadow me all the time. And, because I was selling so many homes. And then they'd see what I did, and they're like, I guess I don't want to sell them.
Yeah, homes, that's interesting though, right?
Yeah, they want like a secret formula.
Let's talk about that for a second. So like, how many people do you feel like you meet, even in your coaching groups, maybe people join and then leave or whatever, I don't know.
Sure.
But like, how often do you meet somebody who asks for advice and like, it's really clear that they're not really willing to put in the work required to accomplish what they see, what they want. Yeah. Like they look at you and be like, oh yeah, maybe this guy got lucky, right? But then when they see the real work, they're like, not everyone wants to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. And so there's a couple things about that. So number one is, people want to feel like it's not them. So let me explain this. So when they see your success, they think one of 2 things. He got lucky, or he somehow, cheated to get it or something. Because the alternative is, no, this guy worked his ass off for 10 years just grinding and eventually built something magnificent. Because people will either have to know they have to either change their own behavior or they got to make you wrong. So that it's much easier to just assume you cheated or you got lucky. They think this magic fairy touches certain people and they just get successful. Like when you see what it takes to be successful, and I talked about this the other day. I was on a coaching call. This company had me do like a training for him. And, the guy was kind of like, well, what else can you do to like be successful? Because he didn't like my answers, And I said,
tell me what I want to hear.
Dude, this is what I said instead. I go, let me be honest with you. Being exceptional is not for everybody. It doesn't sound like it's for you. Because you want to do average things and have an exceptional life. And that just math doesn't work. Yeah. If you want an exceptional life, you have to do extraordinary things. And if you're not willing to do it, that's fine. Go be average and love it. Go spend 8 hours a day with your family. Go spend, have 9 hours of sleep a night. Take 6 vacations a year, whatever you want to do. Mm-hmm. But don't expect to have an extraordinary life if everything you do is average.
Right.
And it's just the facts. Like I can tell you your routines and your eating habits by what you look like, period. I'm sorry, but like I can tell how hard you work on your relationships by who's in your life. Like these are the things. Man. Yes. And it's undefeated. Like if you pick any career, dude, and you figure out who's the best, you model what they did, and then you grind and do the work, there's 0 chance you won't be at the top of your game in 10 years. You just will.
Dude. So, okay. It's really interesting that we're talking about this. So last week, I was at a private dinner with with Blake Murray. Do you remember the name Blake Murray?
I don't.
Blake Murray started Divvy.
Okay.
Sold it for $2.5 billion in 5 years.
You should probably know his name.
Okay. Yeah. You should. He's just coming out of the post mega exit retirement. Now I want to do something. So maybe we'll get him on your podcast.
Cool.
He's really cool. And he's zero bullshit. Yeah. He tells you exactly what he thinks. In fact, so he has a reputation for being kind of a ball buster. And in the tech community where, we have a reputation for some kind of wimpy mentality at times, right?
Sure.
Like entitlement, things like that, high salaries, low workload, that sort of thing. And that's just the like stereotype of it. But he ran things really, really hard. And after I sold my company, a few of my employees went to go work for him as well. And it worked out really great for them. But he was criticized at the time for just being too hard on his people. And so we had this whole conversation the other night at dinner about this. And he says, you tell me an argument, try and come up with an argument where a CEO should accept less than excellence. Does it make sense in any case? And it doesn't. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, no matter how many times you hash it up. So he was saying that people would come to me and say, all right, as a CEO or, leader, entrepreneur, whatever, you want me to, do this by this date? Well, if it's too fast, then I can't give you quality. And he says, no, I want you to figure out quality and speed. Go figure it out. That's your job, right? And so, why would we accept anything less than something excellent in any case, unless you don't want it?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not willing to do it.
Yeah. Because everything has a trade-off. There's a price for everything, mm-hmm. right? Like if you want to have a family and be married, well, you're just not going to be able to do the things that a single person does. Yeah. If you want to stay single, you're not going to get the benefits of having a wife and kids. Yeah. It's like, everything has a give and take.
He talked about that too, very specifically. Somebody asked him about, the work-life balance. And he's like, it doesn't exist. He's like, here's what we chose to do. We chose to go really hard. I saw my kids for an hour to hour and a half every night. And we did that for a few years. And he goes, now I see them every day, all day.
But this goes back to my original thing. I said it jokingly, but also very honestly. If you want to have an extraordinary life,
right,
it's going to take so many sacrifices. I mean, everybody that's great at something kind of sucks at everything else.
It's true.
Kobe Bryant was a killer, the Mamba, and the rest of his life was a shit show till he was retired. That's just the truth. You can't be excellent at everything. There is a give and take. So if you want to be dad of the year and never miss a game, that's great. That's the life you choose. And by the way, that's probably the better way to go. To be honest,
for some people it is.
When you say that about that guy, he said, we worked but an hour a night. No, thanks. I don't want to do that. Yeah. I wouldn't work as hard again as I did to build my real estate career. Yeah. I wouldn't do it again.
Because you already did it.
I don't want to do that. That's not where I'm at in life.
And yeah, exactly. You already put in the work and did it.
Right.
You're at a different place in life.
And by the way, I'm glad I did it. I wouldn't even do it again. But I'm glad I did it.
Because you now know what it takes. So that's the funny thing is that's a weird thing is after selling my last business and then taking some time off, it took me a while to forget the pains of doing it again.
Yeah.
It's because I don't know. And then there's some addiction there,
well, look, if you enjoy what you're, so right now I'm building We're the They. I've worked harder than ever. I'm working harder than ever, but it's funny because I just 2 minutes ago said I'd never work that hard again. I'm working harder than I did when I started in real estate, but I never feel like I'm working. I freaking love this. Every single day it's fun. I can work till 10 or 11 at night and I'm like, oh, I should probably go to bed.
You're building.
Well, and it's building, but it's got so much fulfillment and I'm not doing it for the financial reasons. I'm doing it because of how it's changing these guys' lives, right? Yeah. And so the payoff is so great that it's just fun. It's just the way of my life of being now.
Okay, so I'll summarize some stuff and we can keep going on some other stuff. But basically, you build this real estate business. I'd imagine being an agent gives you access to maybe learn how to be a broker, right? Hiring a broker now gives you people to then go get commission off of as well when they sell properties, right? So, more opportunity there because you're in real estate as an agent broker, you get to see and get access to the MLS that lets you find deals, right? And that's huge. So then you start buying and flipping, you start buying and holding and build a little empire doing that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I bought enough real estate that I would never have to work again, essentially, right? Yeah. I said, okay, my worst case scenario, if I squander every other dollar I ever make, if I spend it, if I invest it and lose it, whatever, as long as I have this real estate, then over time, as it's all paid off, I'll have, whatever, tens of millions of dollars worth of real estate paid off. And so I don't have to worry financially day to day.
Yep.
I also, the investment in both Nicola and Entrada helped me to be able to start this company I'm doing now in a way that I never needed it from day one to just make me a bunch of money, right? To replace my lifestyle. And so anyway, and so I think that one of the advantages, I always tell people that are looking to switch careers, because I took a hard right turn at the peak of my career. My last year in real estate I was the number one agent in the state.
Yeah.
Like, I was at the peak of my career. It would never been easier I think my last full year, I sold 497 houses with just a couple people on my team.
Whoa.
They were killers, but
That's huge.
Yeah, it was. So my point is like, I was able to do that because I was coming from a position of so much strength. And I think a mistake that some people make is they're like, I don't like my life. I don't like my career. I don't like my money situation. So they try to start this entrepreneur thing and they're stressed about money. So they're not doing it right. They're not taking care of themselves. They're not enjoying it. They're not building it the right way. They don't have the customer in mind, all because they just didn't like their job. And when you start a business from that place, it very rarely succeeds.
Yeah.
Almost every entrepreneur that has a nice exit, their next business does really well too. Why? Because A, they know how to do it, but B, they financially are in a place where they get to do it the right way. They get to hire talented people to kind of help them do it. And so, it's one of those things that I warn people. I think 90% of people, if I'm being honest, Chad, that try to be entrepreneurs probably shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Like, you're paying for your own education.
Why
well,
is that?
because it's A, you have to learn everything yourself.
Yeah.
B, you every single thing comes out of you. Like, every dollar you spend is money out of your bank account.
I think going back to this idea though, that you already brought up, that like, I think people who want to be an entrepreneur, they want the idea of being an entrepreneur.
For
they
sure.
don't want to do it.
Yeah.
That shit's hard.
You know how many times I wish I
So
could have just gone home at 5 and turned it off and not worried about it?
For
I
sure.
was jealous of my roommate one time. He worked at the hat store in the mall. I was jealous of that guy. I'm like, God, he gets to just go home at 5 o'clock and not worry about work.
It's so awesome.
He'd sit there and play Nintendo all night or whatever the hell it was, PS9.
Now, look, with all this success, certainly there were times along the way where you're like, oh crap, that investment went totally sideways.
Oh gosh, most of them.
Like there's a flood in a house I just bought, right? Like, of course that's happened, So it's not all perfect, but like, how do you go from, we haven't even talked about your podcast, but your podcast has grown like huge, right? How many episodes do you have?
About 560 now.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
I got a lot to do to catch up to you.
Yeah, it's fun, man. Now I get to interview almost anyone I want now. It's really, but by the way, it's just, I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
From day one, I just really like doing it. So
I didn't anticipate
it never felt like work.
Yeah, I didn't anticipate that either. Like, it took me a while. Like, I was thinking about doing it for a while, and like, I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I do.
Well, I had a podcast on my podcast right before this. I have another one after this, and you're like, dude, you're gonna have any energy? And I was like, what are you talking about? I love this.
I got it.
This is fun. Like, this.
Okay, so how
I get to do this for work today?
How are we gonna get Robert Kiyosaki on your podcast? That would be my ultimate favorite.
Really? He's been on a few of my friends' podcasts. He's doable. Yeah.
You got to get him.
I've had on, if you look at the top mentors or people in the country right now, I've had most of them on. So here's my secret. You want to know what I do?
Yeah.
Okay, so whoever I want to get on, so we can use Robert Kiyosaki as an example, okay? So I pull up their Instagram.
Yeah.
We'll do it right now in real time. You know what I'll do? I'll report back. I'm going to try to get him on, okay?
Okay, do it.
And because I've never actually tried. So I'll go to his Instagram. He's only following 67 people. So I'll see who he's following.
Interesting.
And then any of those that I've had on, I'll send him a message and say, hey, man. So he's had Lewis Howes. So that's one he's following. So I've had Lewis Howes on.
Yeah.
Let's see, Dean Graziosi, I've had him on. Russell Brunson, Grant Cardone, I've had him on. So I've got 4 guys I've had on that he follows out of 67.
Did you go out to Grant Cardone, or did he come here?
That one was over Zoom.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay, so I've had 4 guys out of 67 that he follows on my podcast. So I'll send him a message now. We'll do this later, and then I'll report back in a few months.
I'm curious because I love how he thinks.
Oh, yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah,
he's kind of lost it a little bit the last few years.
Yeah, he's been saying the world is going.
Yeah, he's been saying that for 5 years, but
sure, we're still doing okay.
Eventually, he's going to be right.
5 more gold. Yeah,
but that's how I get these guys on. So I just had just this morning, Jim Quick's team confirmed with me. They asked if he wanted to be on my podcast.
Yeah, he spoke at the Silicon Slopes.
Well, he's huge. He had one of the top books in the country last year, and so I'll be interviewing him in a couple of weeks. But the more I get these guys, right? I just had Ed my lead on. I just had like Roger Clemens on.
Yeah.
So I was trying to get an athlete the other day, and I said, hey man, here's who I've had on recently: Johnny Manziel, Roger Clemens, Vince Young. I started naming some of these famous athletes, Jerry West. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's a legit podcast. Of course I want to come on. And that's how it works.
Right,
and so once you so I tell people, as you're starting a podcast, you want to, let me give a quick networking lesson. This is actually, because people always ask, this is the number one thing I get asked to speak on. Okay. If you think of the game as there's like 10 levels. Okay. Yeah. And the top level is the most successful people in the world. We're talking literally like, this is Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Trump, whatever. Right.
Yeah.
Level 2 would be like your Ed Milets, Tony Robbins, maybe like Gary V, whatever. Okay. Yeah. Well, if a college kid is level 10, whatever level you're on, it's important to have the self-awareness to know where you really are on this totem pole, right? The second thing is you don't want to reach up 8 spots.
Totally.
I've never reached out to Robert Kiyosaki because until the last year, I probably didn't have the credibility to get him.
You can now.
Exactly. But my point is so if you're on level 9, you want to find out who's doing a little bit more than me. Yeah. And then here's the trick. Create value in their life. Figure out a way to create value for them. So then you truly do connect. You become friends. And all of a sudden, now from level 9, I'm on level 7. And then I just keep going, who inspires me that's 2 steps ahead of me?
Yeah.
Who inspires me that's a little bit further along than me? And I'll go create value in their life. Yeah. So then I become friends with them. And then more and more until next thing you know, your friends are all the guys that you want to be hanging out. They're the people that inspire you. They're people that make life better because just the attitude they show up in.
Totally. And it's huge. Like, I think for those that don't know, your podcast is like one of the top podcasts in Utah. I think maybe the top business podcast in Utah. Anyway, you got a lot of reach. So definitely, I bet he would come on your podcast.
Oh no, I can get him. Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it just for fun. Podcast. Yeah, I guarantee I can get him.
That'd be so cool. Yeah. Okay, so
which, by the way, why? But here's the question: like, do you know why he would?
Why?
Because now there's value for him in doing it. It has enough views. It has enough reach that he knows. Wow, this is worth me doing. He's trying to sell his courses. He's trying to
get bookings
sell
from
it,
of
course.
Sure,
and so he now knows. Like, it's the same reason I made you get 30 episodes before I came on yours. I want to make sure I wasn't wasting my time.
Yeah, for sure.
Like now you have enough reach, and honestly, it's like, oh, he's taking it serious.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I'll come do it.
Yeah, totally. And the crazy thing is, in starting a podcast, like staying consistent at it, like people are listening. It's so crazy. I've had people reach out to me, friends of friends, and totally non-Utah community, just like reaching out and saying, "Hey, have you heard of this podcast?" And people are listening. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I had a guy on last week, Case Lawrence. He's running for office here in Utah.
Yeah.
And he sent me a message yesterday, and he goes, "Dude." He goes, I've had people from almost every state reach out about our podcast. He goes, you truly have the reach. He goes, I am so grateful you had me on.
For sure. No, when I was on yours, I literally got texts from people that I know that have 0 ties to Utah, which is so cool. Like, cool. Like, I don't know, at least 10. Yeah. It's really cool. Like, hey, I got a notification. Listen to a podcast you were on today.
Yeah. And so that's but again, it's like anything, dude. Nobody was, I mean, my friends were all listening at the beginning, but that was about it. I remember I had a couple of guests on you. You're like, oh my gosh, once I have this episode, it's going to change everything. Yeah. And you put the episode out and not one person reaches out and you're like, oh, crap. And if you're attached to the outcome, this is with any business, as an entrepreneur, the same thing. If you're attached to the result, that's a really bad day. Yeah. And you're going to get discouraged. You're going to stop. I didn't care. I just kept filling up the funnel, dude. I was like, if I just keep getting enough good people, eventually somebody's going to listen to this. Yeah,
somebody is going to be awesome. Yeah. So, okay. So you build this like, real estate business that's doing really, really well, allows you to do other stuff, invest in other companies, try new things, people start coming to you and how long ago did you start the podcast? Like a few years now? 7
years ago.
It's been that long. Wow. Okay. So we are in a space in the studio. You actually own this studio.
Yep.
And the space we are in used to be what?
It was my real estate office.
So we
bought a bigger office and then I converted this to the podcast studio.
Yeah, exactly. And it's perfect. But think about that, right? Like you're stair-stepping this like entrepreneurial journey, like the whole time, right? Like one resource to another resource, It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So like, let's talk about the coaching group. So like at what point do you go from, all right, I'm building this thing. Like, how does that happen? Do people start reaching out to you, say, hey, come talk about this to somebody?
Yeah. So I'll give you kind of the whole thing because it's kind of a cool story in and of itself. So, I got asked to speak a lot about real estate. I was, again, one of the top agents in the country. And so I remember a couple, 7-8 years ago, I spoke to a couple thousand agents at Keller Williams family reunion. You know, I spoke in front of over 1,000 people at Mike Ferry's event. Like I was getting invited on a lot of different Zoom meetings and things like, not Zoom back then, whatever the hell it was. But anyway.
Webinars.
Yeah, webinars, exactly. And people started reaching out. They're like, hey man, do you do one-on-one coaching? Do you coach? I love your style. I love your energy. I want to learn from you. I was like, no, you know, because I was making so much money selling real estate. I didn't want to take away from it. And I knew the numbers of a coach, they weren't that much money compared to what I was making in real estate. And then I had a couple buddies that were pretty close to me that kind of needed it. Like, hey, would you coach me, dude? I really need this. And so I started doing it. And God bless them, because I was cutting my teeth on their lives. But, you know, I started to enjoy it.
But you knew, like you had tons of experience.
For sure.
And that's super logical to say, like, all right, why would I go and bill you hourly, even though it's a lot? Like, why would I bill you hourly if I'm making like tens of thousands or more over here in a short amount of time?
Yeah. And so I did, you know, I had a couple buddies that were really instrumental in kind of helping motivate me to just keep pushing. So we had this mastermind I did with Justin Prince, Woody Woodward, Rob Sperry, and Sean Whalen. And all of us were kind of in the coaching space in one way or another. Like I had my
How long ago was this?
This was 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
So Sean had his coaching group.
And it was growing. You know,
he had it up to thousands of people. Justin was speaking in front of audiences as big as 20,000 people.
Wow.
Rob was throwing some of the biggest masterminds around, like $20,000 a person to go to Tahiti and Hawaii and these things, you know. And then Woody had this over the phone coaching program where people would pay him every month and they'd do a weekly call. I was doing, again, like the podcast. And so we all had a different way of doing it. And I learned from these guys and the impact you can make in the way. So when I started going, well, maybe I should do something with this. And then about 4.5, almost 5 years ago now, I sold the most expensive home ever in Utah. It was $32.5 million. I made almost 7 figures in like 20 minutes, dude. And I'm not joking when I say it did nothing for me. I was just like, it was just another day. And I'm like, holy shit.
How did you get the listing? Just because you were
it wasn't
popular
listing. I represent the buyer.
Okay.
So I was the investor in his company and we were friends and everything. Yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Good to know people, right? Going back to like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I joke I made it in 20 minutes, but it took me 7 years to sell my first house over $1 million bucks, right?
Yeah,
like, totally. I mean, but ultimately, yeah. And it got to this point where I literally was like, I need to do something more impactful. And so I started really leaning into that question. And it took me about 2 years to come up with it. And then I thought about we are the they. But I didn't, at the time, I just said, you know what? I've been on this mission for 15 years to become a better version of myself. What if I just took everything I've learned, all these amazing people I get to be around, these coaches, these mentors, these seminars I've been to, and I just put into a program. And I kind of wanted to use Sean's model because that sounded the most fun to me. I was like, okay, if I can do it with a lot of people at once, that time-wise, that sounds a lot better.
What did Sean say? Like, did you talk to him about it? Or
he was very helpful.
Ideas and that's cool.
Yeah, he was helpful. I mean, mine's very different than his, but it was like a lot of the ideas for sure. Like, and we were literally
structure.
Not only did I ask him, we were literally masterminding together.
That's cool.
Like we were in a group all morning and sharing our best secrets. You know what I mean?
Dude has an interesting brain. He like comes up with ideas in like the way he'll answer a question. You know, when you talk to somebody and you know how they're going to answer a question. Yeah. Not him. Yeah. Like true. I feel like you kind of don't know what you're going to get. For sure. And anyway, smart, but
yeah. No, I was talking to my buddy the other day, and Sean had said one thing to him that kind of changed his life. You know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
cool.
But yeah, and so then all of a sudden I was like, all right, Woody, teach me about this weekly thing, and then I was like, Justin, teach me how to speak a little bit better, you know? And it's like, Rob, I don't dare throw one of these masterminds. He goes, trust me, dude. And then I talked to my buddy, Jeremy Nevis, and I was going to charge
Jeremy,
a certain price point, and just wouldn't work. And then he's like, no, dude, this is what you need to charge. This is what you're worth. I'm like,
were you too high or too low?
Way too low. Yeah. So because I didn't know, dude, I didn't know if anyone was going to buy it. So my original group, I knew I wanted to be 50 guys only because when you go over that, it gets really hard to keep the personal relationships. And that was what I wanted to create, was a community. I wanted to create deep friendship. Yeah. That was the one thing I'm like, I think I know how to do that. Yeah. Because I just had a bunch of really good friends, like deep friendships. And so I launched this thing 2.5 years ago. And I was hoping it would take me less than a month to sell it. So I gave myself a month before the first event.
To fill the group.
Yeah. Bro, I had 50 spots. I had 147 people apply in 8 hours.
Wow.
I was like, oh my gosh, I have tapped into something here.
I can choose here, right?
Like, yeah, it just blew me away. I was like a whole new problem. Like, what do I tell the other 97, you know? Anyway, and so I launched the first group. And dude, here's the secret. We talked about this earlier. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue what I was doing. I was hoping this thing would work. I was hoping it would have impact. We just came out with a new.
But you knew but your experience, you knew you have value. You just didn't know how to like put it together, right?
100%.
Like, you had to figure that out.
Well, dude, I took all the things that had the most impact on me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I said, let me put my own personality in it. Let me put my own spin on this. But I didn't know though. I was just kind of trying it and hoping. I mean, I was confident, right? But I was like,
okay, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Imagine today, like all the impact that there has been, or, you know, thousands of people that have heard you talk about it, that have been influenced by you. Like, what would have happened if you didn't do it?
This is
like, think about how shitty that would be.
So, dude, check this out. So, we just came up with a documentary. So, Group 4 just had their opening weekend event a couple months ago.
Awesome.
And it shows this event, the first one I threw, that's just life changing.
Yeah.
And by the way, go to my website, whatmovement.com, watch this documentary. If you really want to know what we're doing, have you seen it yet?
No. I think I've seen clips.
Dude, I'll send you the link. You need to watch it. You watch it and you finally get what we're doing.
Dude, like the full, I saw like a teaser.
It's about an hour 15.
So
the
it's
full
out.
documentary. It's out now. Yeah, I just put it out last week.
I want to listen to it.
So I'll send it to you. But in the documentary, it basically, what was I getting at? You can see exactly like why this thing has been so impactful, but you get to see like behind the scenes of kind of what I'm doing too a little bit. And so anyways, what I was saying with that is up until that moment, I didn't know what was going to happen. I just decided to go. And you asked the question, you said, what if you never started? So this is what I was saying. In the documentary, there's a guy in Group 4.
Yeah.
And his name's Brian Wrigley. We tell his story at the end. And he's very successful. Guy he's one of the wealthiest dudes in Utah. Okay. But personal life just had some things he needed to change, you know? And he came to the weekend, and part of the weekend is I have him jump off this 400-foot cliff, and we spend almost 4 hours the night before mapping out a bad habit, negative belief, or a relationship that needs to end that you need to leave behind, and you come up with your new identity, right? Mm-hmm. And so we take him through this exercise. He jumps off, and he's bawling. He's like, I left my old self there. I mean, I'm leaving the shame. I'm leaving the guilt. I'm leaving everything. I'm coming up this new man. Dude, since that, it's been about 2 months now. He's lost like 30 pounds. Wow. He hasn't had a single drink. He used to drink every day.
Wow.
You know, he's just left behind this person that he was. And my whole point of this is, you said, what would have happened if you never started it? Well, he was not going to come to the weekend. And Michael McHenry, who's one of his best friends, he owns Sunday's Best, a bunch of restaurants in town. So really Michael is in my group too. And Michael was the one that invited him to be a part of it. And Michael, he called him up the week of the event. And he's like, I don't think I'm going to go. And Michael spent over an hour on the phone convincing him to go. Yeah. So this dude, in the documentary, we show this voicemail. And it's from Brian to Michael. And he basically says, dude, I don't know how to say this, but I love you so much. He said, I wasn't going to go. I was out. And I am haunted by the thought that my life, the next 20 years of my life will be so different because I was there. And it's haunting the shit out of me that I almost didn't go because I never even would have known what I didn't go to.
Wow.
And I kind of think about it the same way with my group. Like, no one would have known. It just wasn't even a thing. We wouldn't even know what we didn't know.
Yeah.
And that kind of haunts me. It's like, because to be honest, man, I took a financial hit to do it. It took a lot of guts for me to turn over my real estate team at my peak, right? Like, I've worked so hard the last few years to make this work.
Too. That was at peak.
The very peak. Estate. Yeah. No, it was Jordan retiring after the first 3 championships.
Yeah, man. That's scary.
But I did that, and because I knew I needed to do something more impactful. Yeah. So to like be here now, it's kind of like, holy cow, like if I hadn't listened to my heart, if I hadn't done this, you know, you don't know what would have, but we would have never even known. All these relationships, all these friendships, all these experiences, all these families that have had impact, none of it would have happened. And dude, we all have that effect by how we show up every day in life, and we don't even know it.
Yeah, definitely. Like how does it feel to you building that, like from a fulfillment perspective versus, you know, your previous businesses?
There's a lot of fulfillment in real estate. There really is, because you're helping people decide where they're going to raise their families, and you're helping them get a good deal. So it's fulfilling. And I was lucky enough to pick 2 careers now where my job is to just contact as many of my friends as I can every day. Like all I do is just coach guys now. And before, all I did is called my friends and tried to sell them real estate and connect with them, right?
Yeah.
And, but I'll say this, dude, like I got every single day literally I get a message from one of these guys, how it's changed their life, or from awesome. I got an email yesterday from one of my guys. His brother died in an avalanche 8 months ago. And this dude has been supporting his family, his brother's family, been holding all the weight. And again, we show this, Johnny Warner.
Yep.
Yeah.
So my home that I bought, it's a beautiful, parade home. I bought it from him.
Oh, sweet.
5 years ago.
Okay.
And so I've known Johnny for quite some time.
Yeah,
he's had a hard go at it.
He's amazing.
Recently.
Right. And so in the documentary, we show he comes up and he's sharing his story about this, and we all give him this big group hug and just hold him. And he said that he could literally feel the weight that he's been carrying just fall off. Right. Well, his dad sent me an email yesterday, and he just says, wow. I can't tell you how grateful I am that you did this. It's had such an impact on my son. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I just wanted to tell you that. Thank you. And I'm like, I get those every day now.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, I get chills because it's like, that's what motivates me. That's why I don't feel like I'm working. Like the impact that you can have. And by the way, like the cool thing about this, I'm growing more than anybody. I'm learning more than anybody. I still screw shit up all the time, but I have to study for like an hour or two a day to prep for what I'm going to teach these guys. Right. Yeah. And I'm always going to my own events still to figure stuff out. And so like the coolest part is my own growth, but then also being able to help these guys. Yeah, man, it's the most fulfilling thing I could ever hope for. So like, that's awesome. And I will definitely watch the documentary. What is the next step then? Like, what does this business look like in the future? Like, how much impact can it have? Yeah, and that's the question, right? I mean, if it never became more than what it is right now, but I could keep doing this forever, I mean, A++, I'll take it. If you said that's an option right now, 100% I'd take it. Yeah. I'd smack the button. I love it right now. Yeah. That being said, every business grows or dies or whatever changes. My first group is going to finish in about 2 months. Group 2 finishes by the end of the year. Wow. And these are 100 leaders. These are 100 guys that I have friendships with that are a part of this thing. And so it's going to be different, right? Group 4 just launched. Group 5 launches May 1. Again, we'll just keep it moving. But I've built a headquarters in Lehi now because I want to build the tribe, which is kind of the more the starter version of the program, because it just can affect more people, right? Yeah. I want it to, keep expanding and keep having more impact. What do you mean by headquarters? Do you think it would make sense for you to have like kind of an HQ? That's what it is. So you'll have an office there or something? Or what it is no, it's a warehouse. And so we do, so this month alone, we have up above, it's like a hangout with TVs and pool and all that, right? So we're going to have a, NCAA basketball tournament party on both the Thursday and Friday. That's awesome. We're going to have breath work one night because it's a warehouse. We have this big space down below. So we have the warehouse one night for the breath work. We're doing a yoga one night. We're doing a sound bowl meditation one night. We're doing a poker tournament one night. Sound bowls are amazing. So I went to Nepal for a couple weeks. Oh, wow. I don't know, it's been like 4.5 years, just maybe 5 years or so. And I kept seeing these monks playing sound bowls, and it was just the most relaxing feeling ever. And I bought one while I was there. I still use it on my own. Yeah. And it's the coolest thing if you haven't tried that. Yeah. I mean, and then again, we're just doing all these different things. We're having a networking night, right? Mm-hmm. We're doing a mini mastermind where people can come and discuss a work issue. And then you got 10 dudes sitting around a round table. Where's it at in Lehi? It's in Lehi right off Main Street. Oh yeah. Yeah. We're doing country dancing lessons one night. So I'm creating basically a place where people can just come and connect and communicate and and get healing and all the above. That's really awesome. I'm stoked for you to have shared your story today. Okay, so with where you are in your career, like, what is one thing that you would like to share? And I don't usually ask this question, but I think that you've been through like a lot of different things, and you've been exposed to just connecting with a lot of different people. Like, what is one thing that you think is most important for people to hear from you? I mean, there's so many different things I could say. I'll say this, like, I was talking to somebody the other day. He asked me a question. He said, all right, so what's happiness? And I said, I think it's when you truly just like the person that you are. So become obsessed with just like healing and figuring out what don't you like about yourself and looking at it and being honest. Like, dude, I've had to look at myself over the last year. Like, there's some people in my life that honestly don't like me and don't like what I'm doing. And so I've had to look at every single thing they've said and be like, is there truth in this or is there not in this? and then try to just being better, right? But also just knowing like this whole thing is a beautiful mess. There's no one right way to do life.
Right.
You're gonna make mistakes. So I'm very easy on myself. I'm hard on myself, and then I give myself a lot of grace. And I think the beauty of life is in the mess. And so when you can embrace it as such, like I really do enjoy just getting to wake up every day, and kind of this whole life is kind of the trip, right?
Yeah.
In my new book, it's coming out April 1. It's called Be One, and how to be a healthy man in toxic times. And there's a part in there where I talk about, I said, the goal is not to feel better. Every time you get in trouble is when you're trying to feel better, whether that's overeating, porn, sex addiction, whatever, all these different things, sports addiction, like whatever, right? Yeah. When you're focused on feeling better, you have a problem. The goal is to feel more and not judge those feelings that you get. Like feel through the sadness, feel through the loneliness, whatever it is, right? Like kind of diving into those things. And that's what a lot of what we do with my program is just being okay. Like, you know what? Like I can sit with this, and then you moving past it, and then, put your big boy pants on and rub it off and deal with it. I mean, like the wound, not the, and you go and you do your thing. And so like, ultimately, I think that's the key to this thing. I think that's the key to having a good life, a happy life is figuring out like, okay, why not? Because anything you resist persists, right? Anything that you haven't been able to look at and experience is going to keep coming up, and they spring out in these weird ways. And so ultimately just working on yourself and enjoying this whole thing, man. So like I've gotten to the point where like when something bad is happening in the moment, I kind of laugh. I'm like, wow, this is going to be a good story. Or all right, there's a lesson I'm getting in this one. Yeah. And that's what I would say. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's actually been something on my mind as well lately. Okay. Thank you so much. If somebody wants to reach you or hear more, about the group, like where can they? Yeah. So my Instagram is probably the best place. Mr. Jimmy Rex. If there's a link in the bio that has you can see the documentary. It's free right now. We put it out there. You can get all the information on my group, but also on my Instagram stories is where I share all my upcoming podcasts. It's where I share events we're throwing, like the poker night, stuff like that, $100 dinner club, all the above. That's awesome. Thank you. All right. Thanks, man. Thank you for listening to today's episode of No Instructions. Feel free to leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe so we can continue producing these podcasts. Today's episode was brought to you by Distro. Distro is a platform to help startups find, hire, and pay employees in over 200 countries. It's free to use. Go to distro.io to set up your free account today.